the Cats and the Grizz. This time, though, top five, both sides. University of Montana, number 3 in the FCS coming into this game. Montana State, number 4. And oh, by the way, it's for the outright Big Sky Conference Championship and almost certainly the 2 seed and home field advantage throughout the playoffs. So the stakes literally can't get any higher. Ryan Tootell joining us now here on Nuanez now, or on Tuesdays with Tootell.
Yeah, I mean, it's very fluid at this point, really.
First of all, you came on Nuanez now yesterday. We talked about this game just from a broad sort of perspective. Since we got off the phone, what's hit your mind? Sometimes we then ruminate and think further. I mean, what sort of things have you been thinking about when it comes to this game?
You know, it's interesting because after about the second quarter of both games last Saturday, it was just so clear that we were going to get what we hoped that we would get, which was both teams not just coming off of wins, coming off of straight ass kickings, and looking like the best versions of themselves on the second to last week of the season, and headed for this thing. I thought my very initial reaction was, for the first time in a long time, I really don't have a feeling of what I think is going to happen in this game.
Why is that?
Because they're both. When I say what's going to happen, I just mean outcome wise. Like, I know what's going to happen. I know the Bobcats are going to run the football. I know the Grizzlies are going to, get out there and they're going to try and have a nice balance of things. What we don't know is what the quarterback situation is going to look like for the Grizzlies, and that's on one hand, an advantage strategically going in, but on another hand, maybe a strategic disadvantage in terms of being unsettled. Who knows? We'll see how that plays out. But I guess the point is that both these teams are so good. And what Montana has done, I mean, it's hard to say turn their season around. They had one loss, but I mean, I have never seen Montana under Bobby Hauck improve like this over the course of a season. I have seen them
for sure.
I have seen them be lights out of the gate and stay at the same level while other teams get better. So it's not actually that Montana has gotten worse over the course of seasons. It's just that they haven't improved compared to where they came out in August, September. And then when other teams get better, they just look worse. And now show me a team in America that's gotten more better than Montana over the course of the season. I don't think you're going to find that. So all that to say, I sat here and I went, wow, like I am genuinely intrigued and without impression about what I think is going to happen. Then when I saw, I mean, it's so crazy, man, but when I saw the Clifton McDowell interview immediately post game, and I texted you, I said, the Grizz are not winning a game in which their quarterback doesn't know the name of it when he's going to play in it, and he's going to get completely overrun. And I do think that that's true. And so then I had this, then I was like, man, I think really Montana State's got the upper hand here.
What if that's
and since that point,
what if it's a huge advantage? What if it's a huge advantage? Because he doesn't know what he's getting into.
Here's the thing, man. It all depends on the constitution of the individual.
Right.
Like, some people cannot know what they're getting into and be like, oh, this is cool, let's roll. And other people go, whoa, wasn't ready for that. And I think it's more often than not the latter than the former. Like, I think more often than not, kids and even adults, coaches who haven't been there before, they get rolled up in this thing, man. This is like what the big wave crashing, and you get caught in the wash, and there's nothing you can do but just wait for it to spit you out on shore. Like, that is what this game does to people. But here's the thing, is ever since I thought that, 48 hours later now, I'm back to square one, where I don't know what the hell's going to happen, and because they're both so good. And I was talking to a good friend of mine who spends a lot of time following these two teams, and he's like, is there any outcome that would surprise you? And I mean, I kind of said, well, if one team blows the other out, I think I would be somewhat surprised. That said, though, sometimes one team just gets it rolling. Like one of these teams could win by 20, and you would never convince me that the other team is 20 points better than this team, the other team, regardless of who does it.
For sure.
But within the context of one game, it can happen. Like guys, just like get on a roll, the play calling goes right, the game script goes bad, whatever it is. That said, this feels very much to me like a close game. I really think that. And we haven't had a close game since the fumble on the goal line in this rivalry.
True.
And as compelling as this game is every year, I would be so happy to see a game that came down to the fourth quarter, came down to the last couple drives, and the execution that's required to do it in the moment.
Well, so much of two things. First of all, so much of what goes into blowouts, especially if this version of the Grizz team is going to blow you out, is them forcing a ton of turnovers. And I'm not saying it's not going to happen, but that's the thing that both these teams do best offensively is not turn the ball.
Sure.
Tommy Watt doesn't throw picks. Clinton Medell's thrown one pick. It was a horrible pick, but he's thrown one pick in his entire senior season. So that's part of it. The other part, though, is we've seen just the complete unraveling of the team that gets punched in the face and can't get back on track. That's exactly what's happened the last 3 rivalry games. The Grizz completely unraveled in Missoula, or in Bozeman, 2 times in a row. And the only time I've seen the Cats be completely out of sorts and have no answers whatsoever when Brent Vigen has been their head coach has been in Missoula the last time they were there. So I do think, though, because both sides have experienced the unraveling, they'll have a plan to not unravel, which then I think takes them away from, takes away the possibility of a blowout. I think I agree. I think I'd be shocked if either side completely ran roughshod, 49-14 or 55-21 like we've seen in recent years.
And this is going to be the third matchup between Vigen and Bobby Hauck, I believe. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So, and they've split the first 2.
Split the first 2.
We are in a certain level of familiarity now.
Yes.
With the other one. And I think there's enough personnel that have been consistent over the last couple of years that are going to be playing this game. I mean, we talk about the Grizz quarterbacks, okay, but there's a lot of dudes playing for the Grizzlies that have played in this game before.
That's right. Yep.
And that matters. And I think both coaches are going to have a tremendous plan. I think you're absolutely the turnover thing. We understand. Okay, everybody, like it's cliched that turnovers are the biggest stat outside of points in terms of determining a victor.
Sure.
But when 2 teams like this protect the ball in general as well as they both do, one turnover becomes even a bigger deal than what it would be in other scenarios and in other games. And it wouldn't surprise me if there ain't one, by the way. It wouldn't surprise me if if we got a bunch of punts and field goal attempts or whatever. But I will say the team, especially the team that turns it over first, is their winning percentage has dropped by 10-15% on that in that moment right there, whoever it might be. So that is certainly something. I want to circle back though to talking about maybe not knowing is kind of an advantage or could be.
Yes.
Kia Iliaya.
Yeah.
He is a dude who played at among the highest levels of prep football that you can play with. Guys he's playing football with are D1 starters in the Power 5 conferences in America right now. He's a legacy kid. He knows what Montana is all about. And it certainly means something to him. But there is something to be said for a kid who's like, Montana is great, but it ain't that big a deal. It ain't Alabama. It ain't LSU. It ain't Michigan. Whatever on down the line, or even if you want to, Wisconsin, right, or Rutgers. I don't know. However you want to cash it out.
Sure.
Now, I certainly would be of the persuasion that Montana actually is as important as Rutgers in football.
Here's the thing about
you understand
Montana.
what I'm saying? Like
totally
these levels.
The other side of the coin, though, and I've always said this, and when people ask me, hey, do you ever want to go cover the NBA or the NFL? If you cover LeBron James and the Lakers, you certainly have millions of people that are going to read your stuff or listen to your stuff or watch your Zooms or whatever. You also have tens of millions of people that live in that area that don't. That's the difference.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if you're a sports fan or not. Pretty much every person in Montana is paying attention to what's happening on Saturday. Even if you don't know anything about sports and don't care anything about sports, there's one day a year that you're wondering, well, who won that game?
Yep. Yeah.
Well, how am I going to align with this? My aunt likes this. Oh, my mom likes this. Which side am I aligned with for that one specific day?
Well, and when it comes
every day,
when it comes to like the per capita thing, this is on the level with the Iron Bowl. This is on the level with Michigan, Ohio State, because you're right. Like everybody is either completely invested or ancillarily, if that's a word, invested in what's going on.
I mean, what percentage of bars is going to have this on Saturday? 100% bars in Montana.
I mean, that's like, yeah, that's not a
awesome.
That's not a question. Yeah, but the other thing though, so this is the thing about Ayat though, is that it, to your point, it actually matters a ton.
Yes.
But if you come into it knowing that it's important, knowing how much it means because you come from a family, and again, the second greatest Grizzly quarterback in the history of the program, but you have been in Hawaii playing with guys who have never thought one second about the Big Sky Conference or the University of Montana or Cat Grizz or whatever. And it doesn't have to be so massive. Like when you grow up in Havre, when you grow up in Missoula or Bozeman, when you grow up in the state, and your goal, the thing that you want in life, is athletically is to play for the Cats or the Grizz, and you achieve that, and then you go out there and play. It's beautiful because it means the world to these kids, man. But also, that's when you can see it just can be too much weight for some, like where they just aren't quite ready for it. And who knows what that's going to mean. But I do think a guy like Ayat is sort of uniquely positioned to be successful mentally in his first one of these, if he even plays at all, which we don't even know, right? But that it will certainly be something I'm keeping my eye on.
At Blackfoot Communications, our mission is to connect people, businesses, and communities, bringing a world-class fiber network to homes, communities, and businesses of all sizes, ensures Montanans have access to fast, reliable, and secure internet and phone services. Are you ready for fiber internet? To find out if fiber is coming to your area, visit goblackfoot.com/readyforfiber. Connect to more with Blackfoot Communications.
Tuesdays with Tootell here on SkylineSportsMT.com. Also going to start turning this into a podcast property. So go subscribe to the Big Sky Breakdown, available on all your various podcast hosting platforms. So maybe a little over a year ago, or maybe a little less than a year ago, you and I were sitting in a car driving back from Bozeman, recording basically how do you say? Not the obituary. What do you say at the funeral?
The eulogy?
The eulogy of the Montana Grizzlies. We were like, what? Stick a fork in them. They've lost 3 out of 4. They completely quit. They actually had lost 4 out of 5 at that point because they had the 3-game losing streak in October and then had lost to the Cats. So, and never, ever had I seen a Bobby Hauck team lose because of infighting, dysfunction, poor tackling, and lack of desire. That had never happened before. And I think that's why people freaked out so much after the Northern Arizona loss, because I think it conjured memories of the Cat game. And people started thinking, well, if we're giving up and getting run all over by NAU, we're going to lose by 1 million to the Cats. I think that's why Grizz people were freaking out. How has this changed? How have they gotten this to change? So it's so crazy that a loss in Flagstaff literally was like this trigger point to them figuring it out. And everybody wanted the Grizz to look like they look right now for the duration of the time since they hired Bobby Hauck in 2018. And they not for 1 second looked like this until they got their asses kicked in Flagstaff. And then they look like the Grizz of old all of a sudden. How? It's amazing. It's unbelievable they've been able to do it.
That question should be directed to one person only.
Absolutely.
And And
or I guess one group of people, because you could ask some of the senior guys what changed too. But I totally
for sure. No question. But that is a question for Bobby Hauck. And I think the answer to the question is Bobby Hauck. I said this last week and I'll reiterate it again, completely impressed with what he and his staff derivatively have done this season to go from the lowest point. I mean, other than getting smoked by the Cats, which of course are the lowest points that you're going to experience as a Grizzly if that happens. But the worst game, the worst. I mean, the Dalton Snead blowout in Bozeman was far more explicable than the Northern Arizona debacle. Right. I mean, there was injuries, there was bad matchups, there was all kinds of stuff all over the field that made that.
And the Cats were just unbelievably too. I mean, they had so much talent.
Totally. So even though that is a awful, I mean, blowout loss, it just isn't what we saw at Northern Arizona. That is the lowest of low points that I've seen Montana under Bobby Hauck from a football standpoint. And I mean, you should get him on. I mean, I realize what I'm asking you, but to say, like, how has this happened? Because here's the thing.
Why know it's so funny? If they run roughshod on Saturday, someday, maybe in the near future or the distant future, but someday he will come on.
Yeah.
If they don't, he won't.
No, and that's what it is, man. I mean, you gotta, people who are in these positions, they get to call the shots they want to call. So that's the way it is. But here's what I do think. I think that the person who was the most shook about the NAU loss wasn't the players, wasn't Grizz fans. It was Bobby Hauck. I think he went and had to, after that, and after the bullshit press conference that he gave after that too, I might add, which was just the height of the disrespect, not just to an individual or whatever, but just in general. Like, what kind of asinine thing is that? That would never stand anywhere else for something like that to happen. And he took a very hard turn out of that, at least in the way that he is projecting himself from that point forward, coaching wise, interaction wise, not just media, but I'm talking about the celebration stuff, the jumping on the kids, the running down the field at Idaho, all this stuff. And I think that he either somebody got in his ear who there's only a handful, but there are people who he does listen to, or he got in front of the mirror and said, okay, it actually is me, and if this is going to change, it has to be me that does it, which I would not have expected. But guess what? It is what we got, what the University of Montana got. And for that, this is the greatest coaching job of Bobby Hauck's career, at least in the second time at Montana, for sure. And I could argue even more than that. I will always commend people who see something that is wrong with their world and are able to take a turn and change it and fix it. Yep. Whether that's interpersonally, internally, mentally, emotionally, physically, whatever, and he has brought this team to a height that they have not been at since he's been here again the second time. And it's completely impressive. And he deserves as much credit as he deserved condemnation after the first week of the Big Sky Conference season. And he's getting all of that. And frankly, there's a level at which, I mean, let me not speak to, of course it matters what happens Saturday. That's the end of the story. But there is, if Montana loses to Montana State, which is, of course, entirely, I mean, they're underdogs. They're home dogs.
Yep, totally.
It actually, if you're taking this season on a whole and where we're at right now, I'm not going to sit here. I don't see any scenario under which I go, well, there was the real,
Totally.
Dr. Jekyll of this whole thing for Bobby Hauck and the Grizzlies. You know what I mean? I think that he's already cemented this season as being a phenomenal success, an
Yeah.
unbelievable coaching job by him. They're going to the playoffs regardless of outcome. And
Yep.
as much as this game matters, you already know you got your ticket stamped and you've got a second season out there ahead of you. So I give credit across the board to him and to the whole staff and to the play. I mean, again, the players actually are the ones that got to go out and do it, and they get to choose whether or not to buy in. And yeah, coaches push buttons and they do whatever. And but I mean, again, this group has coalesced and been fantastic. And correct me if I'm wrong too, they have been relatively healthy.
That's right. They got incredibly banged up during spring ball, and then during fall camp, it was like the walking wounded. But they lost all those guys, and ironically, because like Henry Noose got hurt for the whole year, one of the big tackles, I think Dylan Botner got hurt for the whole year. It happened in August though, so they could mitigate. It wasn't like, oh, we don't know when we're going to get this guy back. They're just out. Jacob McGowan.
Mm-hmm.
Jacob McGowan just deciding, hey man, I've had enough. I've gotten too many injuries. I blew out my knee. I'm graduating. I'm done. I'm going to law school. They were able to plan for it though ahead of time, and now here they are, and they are healthy. I mean, if you talk about
with the exception of who's the offensive guard
Liam
now,
Brown,
Liam Brown.
Riley and I talked about that yesterday, though. I mean, Liam Brown's a good player. He's a talented guy, he's sophomore, but they've been rotating their guards quite a bit. And so Cannon Pavlov has played a lot there, and Jerry Grimsrud can play a little bit there. Declan McCabe has played. They've been rotating both guards and the right tackle spot. The stalwarts have been Chris Walker at left tackle and AJ Forbes at center. The other guys have been so they actually have depth there. So it sucks for Liam Brown because that's big man getting that sort of injury. It's a bummer, but I think he'll be. I think they'll be okay though because they do have some factors there.
Yeah, but I mean,
let me ask you this. So I totally agree with your assertion that no matter what happens on Saturday, Grizz win, Grizz lose, it's not going to change that much, in terms of coloring your opinion of this season, except if the Cats come into Washington Grizzly Stadium and rush for 400 yards again. If the Grizz are physically dominated and manhandled like they have been in all 5 of their recent rivalry game losses, and the Cats run roughshod over them, like if the narrative after the game is they want to run it, we know they want to run it, and we couldn't stop them, like Bobby Hauck said last year, if that's said again, then it will change your opinion, because it'll change everybody's opinion, because they're going to be like, what the heck are we doing here? They just can't give up 400 yards rushing, man. They got to have some semblance of resistance to the Cat run game.
They have to have some semblance of resistance, but what does that mean? 300 yards?
It's like I talked to.
But I mean, no, seriously.
Rob Ulrich at Idaho, the defensive coordinator, and he said, because I had him on our Vandals Weekly podcast.
Yeah.
And he said, he was like, I couldn't believe what I was telling my room before the Cat game. He said, I said, guys, here's our goal. We got to give up 200 yards or less rushing. He's like, I couldn't believe I was articulating to a defense that 200 yards was an objective.
This is what we want.
But it is, because they averaged 320 yards a game.
Look, man, I actually don't know that I agree with you on that. I expect the Montana State Bobcats to rush for 300 yards. I mean, I just do. And the Grizzlies will be better on run defense than they've ever been against the Cats before, because they have better personnel to deal with the run than they've had in the past. And I don't know how different their defensive system is than it was over the Robbie Hauck years.
Yeah.
But it's a horrendous personnel and schematic matchup the last several years between Montana State and the Grizzlies, because that exotic blitz defense coming from wherever, it just doesn't matter when you're just running, it's not a triple option, but a multiple option run game, and you're just blowing dudes up and blocking them and running down the field.
If you're not gap sound against the gap scheme, the gap scheme is going to ruin your day, and that's exactly what's happened.
Completely. So I do think, like, Bobby Hauck and the staff, they know this. They've got a better situation, I think, overall in terms of stopping the run, but they're not going to stop Montana State running the football. And they don't have to in a certain sense. Yeah, but you do have to have resistance to it, to your point. You know what matters? It doesn't matter if you give up an 11-yard run. You're going to do that. It doesn't matter if you give up a 15-yard run. You're going to do that. What matters is when you get to third down, can you get off the field? Can you find a way in the key moments to do it? Now, of course, it matters if every play they run goes for 11 yards. Then Montana State's going to just blow the doors off again. But these, getting a win on offense for Montana State is going to happen, and it's going to happen again and again. Getting a win on defense for the Grizzlies, it's also going to happen multiple times. And the question is, in the moments where it's going to be change of possession, we already talked about how limited we expect turnovers to be. How do you get the ball back? You play defense and get off the field. That's how. And so when you have a 3rd and 4, a 3rd and 3, can you find a way to do it? And also, what's Coach Vigen's mentality? If he's got 3rd and 3 and then he's got 4th and 1, is it like, nah, here we go? And then, of course, then it is essentially a turnover scenario if you can get a 4th down stop. So those are the things that I just think are huge. And ironically enough, the actual rushing yards will, against everything Coach Hauck has ever preached, those will be the empty calorie stats.
Right.
Like, they're going to rack up yards on the ground. I just think it's inevitable that that's going to happen. So then what happens, it's those moments of where you can get the ball back right now. You gave up 60 yards rushing on this drive, but now you can hold them to a field goal attempt from 39 yards, which is a coin flip whether it's going to go through. Those are the moments, man, where you can do it or not. For the Grizzly defense,
and so much of it is how well do the Grizz run the ball too, right? It's about how much, not necessarily how many rushing yards you give up, but how much you get out rushed for, right? The plus minus there can't be hundreds of yards. The Grizz have to somehow run for 175 to 200 themselves as well. And
what was Idaho's key to beating Montana State? Hold the ball for 40 minutes, right? I mean, that's it. It's just going to be our football. If Montana's on the field a whole bunch.
Have you or a loved one been charged or accused of a crime? If so, the stress can leave anyone feeling helpless and alone. But you don't have to be alone. Hi, I'm Dave Maldonado, and I've successfully defended Montanans for over a decade in these situations. So if you're tired of being scared, let's get you prepared. To see how, visit BigSkyDefender.com today.
You are not alone. Visit BigSkyDefender.com to find out more on how you can fight back against local and federal criminal charges.
Good deal for
Grizz. Okay, let's talk about the other side of this quickly, and then I'll let you go. Vigen has done nothing but impress since he came to Montana State. I mean, he's 21-2 in the Big Sky Conference. This is the 3rd straight rivalry game he's going in where he's playing for the conference championship. You could say that this is for the outright title for the first time ever, but the Cats were 7-0 coming to Missoula 2 years ago. That cost them the championship. They beat the heck out of the Grizz last year. That capped an 8-0 year, and they won the championship. They're going for a Big Sky title for the 3rd straight rivalry game. What's the one blemish on his resume, though? And what is the one thing that gives so much consternation to Bobcat Nation at large? Jeff Choate was 29-25 as a head coach at Montana State.
Built
him a statue.
Yeah.
I mean, because guess what the 4 games above 500 was?
Yeah, right.
4 straight wins against the Grizz. I mean, the meme of riding the Grizz on the shirtless back of the family. But that, for better or worse, because of the cumulative mentality of the fan base, but also just the history of the rivalry, especially in the modern era, there is so much of this complex that the Cats have had to overcome. But here we are now. Since I would say like the beginning of the erosion of the dynasty of the Grizz was in 2010 when the Cats came into Missoula and beat the Grizz, and that eliminated the Grizz from the playoffs for the first time in 17 years. It snapped the Grizz 12 straight conference title streaks, and it propelled then Montana State to be the preeminent team in the league. They've won 7 out of the last 11 rivalry games since then, including 5 out of the last 6. Again, though, the one blemish is this. And I just think that there is a certain amount of people that follow this, that even though Brent Vigen is 21-2, if he's not 22-2 after this, they'll say, what's this guy doing? He's 1-2 against the Grizz. We got to get rid of this guy. So fair or not, it's completely outlandish. But regardless, this is the last thing he needs to prove that he is, truly one of the great coaches in the history of Montana State football, and they've had a lot of great ones.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that this is it's a huge game for both coaches. I think even more perhaps in this particular season than in other years. But also first of all, if the Bobcats lose this game, anybody who is calling for Coach Vigen to be gone should not be allowed to speak for the rest of time. Like that's utterly idiotic. That said, within the context of his legacy as a coach, which is being built game by game,
for sure.
But I mean, you couldn't, when they hired Coach Vigen after what Jeff Choate had brought Montana State up to, where he had built that program, the level he had it, he walked into an unbelievable circumstance with one of the great senior classes in the history of the Big Sky Conference to coach, and he took them all the way to a national championship. But the following season, I was certainly one who thought, well, that was a heck of a wave to ride. Now what? And what was just another dominant season, followed by another dominant season. And I am so completely impressed by and in admiration of what Brent Vigen has done over these 3 seasons, and especially these last 2. But getting to 2-1 against the Grizzlies in the rivalry game, and particularly a win against this Grizz team, which is as high and playing as well as we've seen a Montana Grizz team play the last 5 years. That would take it up even another notch for him, and where he and the Bobcats are sitting, just sort of in general. Colter, we talked about the fact, over years past, like there are some moments where we both said, well, that's it. Montana State has not drawn even with the University of Montana. They have passed the Grizzlies. They're out in front, and they are currently right now out in front of Montana. To maintain that requires a win. Again, you just have to be like, well, you thought you were good, but guess what? You're not as good as we are.
That's right.
And we'll take this 2 seed. Good luck if you can make it to Bozeman. Good luck.
For sure.
And
there's also the part about how, because Montana State stubbed their toe against Idaho, I would say that an 8-3 Cat team, given the depth and the prowess and the momentum they have as a program, is a slight underachievement. I thought with their schedule, given the fact that they had to play on the road at South Dakota State, Weber, Sac, Idaho, and Montana, scheduling alone that means that a 9-2 team would be a tremendous effort. And a 9-2 team with that schedule is going to get you the 2 seed, so it is a tremendous effort. But I would say 8-3 is just slightly an underachievement, just given the talent that they have and the coaching they have.
I agree. I mean, the Idaho game is a disappointment if you're a Montana State fan, period. Like, Idaho is a really good football team. They're not as good as Montana State. They just aren't as good as Montana State. But
not as good as the Grizz either.
You didn't get it done, And so that's the reality. And sometimes you need those games. Does anybody think that Northern Arizona is better than Montana? No. No. But you still, the Grizz lost that football game. That's the way it goes. The South Dakota State game was one of the great games of the year between Montana State and SDSU in the FCS conference. I mean, it was unbelievable. That's a championship level football game that they played right there. Losing that game, losing to the Idaho loss is a disappointing loss for sure. It happens. To turn it around over the course of 2 weeks. And what did they win? It was 1,000,000-3, was it not, this past Saturday for Montana State?
It was 41-0 halfway through the second quarter.
Yeah. So I would say that it's just like it's just not really concerning. But here's the other thing, dude, is like, if they end up 8-3, Montana State, if they were to lose this game,
Yeah.
what do you think they are? 6 seed?
I think they
5
probably-
seed?
I think that if the Cats win this game, they'll be the 2 seed, and the Grizz will be the 6 seed. And I think if the Grizz win this game, they will be the 2 seed, and the Cats will be the 5 seed.
Okay. You know what? You're not going to convince me of a 5 seed being disappointing. Like, you're just not going to do.
I know
and
it's just about the home field though, because if they were the 5, then they're going to have to go on the road to play the 4, and then they're going to have to go back to Brookings. That's distinctly different. The number one thing that the winner of this game wants to be on is the same side as Idaho. They don't want to be on the same side as the Dakotas, especially South Dakota State, right?
Yeah.
Honestly, the Grizz winning and losing is a better draw because they'll get the 2 if they win and the 6 if they lose. If they get the 6 and Idaho gets the 3, that's what you want. Or Furman gets the 3, that's also what you want.
Now, the cart is being put way ahead of the horse right now, but I mean, what? We've never seen it. A Cat Grizz postseason
For sure.
matchup. I mean, I am like salivating at the prospect of that. And there is a level at which it seems like the committee has really tried hard to make sure that doesn't happen for reasons that are confusing to me. Like, okay, maybe it's like honest that, hey, these are where the teams got slaughtered and they just always end up on the other side of the bracket. And if it's going to happen, it's going to happen in Frisco. But it's like, why is
that, Ryan? Who's the chair of the FCS playoff selection committee?
Yeah,
the AD of Montana, who doesn't want to play Montana State twice in a year? Both sides.
It's stupid.
It is.
If they end up on the different side of the thing, then whatever. But like a semifinal game in Missoula or Bozeman would be one of the great events in the history of the state of Montana.
And that's the thing is, like, that's what happened if the Cats win and get the 2 and the Grizz drop to the 6, and then they go on the road and beat Furman. There you go. It's 2 versus 3 in Bozeman for the semifinals to go to Natty.
And I think we'd be at that game if I'm not mistaken.
I think we would. We would.
But you know what? Here's what I know for sure: we're going to be at the game Saturday in Missoula.
That's right.
And
that's right.
So my final, I guess my last thing. I mean, I'm so intrigued because I can be convinced either direction on this. I think that the line is probably just about right. Montana State 3.5. If you're going to put my feet to the fire on Tuesday with the right to change this between now and Saturday, I take Montana State and think they find a way to get it done. But this has thriller written all over it. It really does. And that makes me so happy. And that is what I'm rooting for. And this is what we live for, man. Like this is what it's about. So can't wait.
Thanks for being here, man. See you soon.
Love it.
Join Town Pump's Pump It Up Rewards Plus program and never pay full price for fuel again.
Save 5 cents on every gallon every day at any Town Pump across Montana.
Plus, earn and redeem points on your favorite in-store items to get free stuff with our clubs.
Stop in and pick up a rewards card. Download the Pump It Up Rewards Plus app today.
Or visit townpump.com/rewards to register and start saving.